Pro-Life Berks on BCTV is underwritten by Tom Schaefer RV Superstore. Pro-Life Berks on BCTV is underwritten by Tom Schaefer RV Superstore.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Pro-Life Berks. Tonight we have a very good program for you tonight. I'm hosting tonight. My name is Scott Lindsay, and I encourage you all to call in. The numbers there at the bottom of your screen, 610-378-0426. And we have our topic tonight is post-abortion healing. And we have a great guest tonight who's going to be going through her story. And matter of fact, let me introduce her now. Her name is Evelyn Lopez. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing good. And tonight's discussion is going to be on post-healing abortion. But before we really get into that, let's just find out a little bit about you. So if you would just want to open up and just kind of introduce yourself to the crowd.
Yes, hi. My name's Evelyn Lopez. I was born and raised in Bronx, New York. My mother had 8 children. I'm number 6. She had 4 boys and 4 girls. I grew up all my life in the Bronx up until the last 20 years. I moved to Reading, and I've become a member of the Lord's Church, and I am here now.
That's good. Well, let's just jump right in. Tell us
Yes.
a little bit about what kind of led to your abortions.
Well, I was 18 when I had my first abortion, and I started dating a 36-year-old man. He was a drug dealer, and I thought I could handle everything that came with dating an older guy. And I was just so young, I didn't know much about anything. Um, and we started dating briefly for like 3 months, and that was maybe in the winter of '89. I had my abortion, my first abortion, maybe in April. I remember I was like 2 months. I was 2 months when I found out, and by the time I had my abortion, I was 3 months. And I just decided to have this abortion. I didn't care. I want to get rid of the baby, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it. Um, I don't like to call it a choice or a mistake. I just call it a selfish act, because if not, I would have had my daughter because she was a girl. You know, I just robbed myself of that blessing. I put it behind me. I didn't really want no one to know. A friend of mine gave me a phone number to a fancy clinic in Midtown Manhattan. And, I went there with 2 other friends, and it was a female friend of mine and a guy friend that I started dating him afterwards.
Were they there for support or?
They were there for support, they were hurt as well, because the people that are involved in this also, they feel the pain and the sorrow. It's almost like they don't want to talk about it at this moment because it's just so dreadful now that they see, what I had done. So that led to that abortion. And, I really put the pain and buried it deep down inside. And I thought I would never ever go through it again. But 2 years later, I had my second abortion. And I was dating a whole new guy. We dated for about a year when I got pregnant. I decided I'm going to have this abortion. We talked about it, and him and a friend took me to the same clinic in Manhattan on 23rd Street in a corporate building, hidden where no one would know that there was an abortion clinic in there. And we did it. And when I got back home, I was living in the Bronx. I called my sister. She came from Pennsylvania, and she got me. And I just like slept the whole way, and I don't never sleep in any moving vehicles. I was just so sad. I didn't want to think about it. I wanted to put it behind me, let me go away. And by the time I had my third abortion, I was like, I don't want to do this. I cried before, during, and after. Because when I came to for my third abortion, I had three women around me. They told me you cried through the whole process. Like they felt my pain so much. Like when I looked around, no one else was being consulted because they were all with me. Like they heard me crying so hard while having done the abortion, and I just never forget. And I told myself after this, I wouldn't have any more abortions, you know. And then 4 years later, I had my daughter, but a year later, I had another third abortion, and I went to a different clinic. You know, I try to hide it from my family, except for my sister, that she knew of all of them. And I went alone to a place in the Bronx, and my daughter was 1 years old already by then, and I just wanted to put it behind me like the first one. Like I didn't really want to know about it. I knew what I already had done. I'd done something so horrific, you know. I'm just so glad that the Lord had sent His only Son to free me.
Now, between your third and your fourth abortion, you had a daughter.
I had a daughter.
So, can you explain to us why you decided to have her?
Well, the moment I found out I was pregnant, I told myself, I am keeping this baby. I am not doing it because I was in so much pain for my third abortion. You know, and I was like, I can't do this. You know, now going back to my first abortion, it was like I knew what I was doing, but I was just so disgusted because I was involved with the wrong guy and I didn't want the baby, you know. So, like I said, and by the time I was at the third one and I cried and I was just in so much pain that I just said, this is it. I'm going to have her. But then a year later, I was just like, you know, I'm broken again. I'm coming into this abortion clinic and I'm alone this time. I don't have anyone with me, no friends, no boyfriends, no one, you know, and it was just really heart-wrenching to go through it all over again. And I just kind of like did it and put it behind me.
Now, if you could go back to that first abortion, what do you think you would have said to a younger Evelyn?
Don't do it. There's other options. There's adoption. Maybe you can keep the baby and have her. I just would have never had done it.
Now, if you had to go back to Evelyn after the first abortion for the second one, do you think you would have approached it differently?
Oh yeah, definitely.
How do you think you would have done that?
I would have put my feelings to the side and thought about this baby that I'm carrying inside me, regardless of who I was in love with, because I was in love with another guy while I was dating one guy. And if I could go back, like you said, I probably wouldn't have had my kids that I have now. I probably would have had, the second one was a son. You know, his name was Little Louie, and I think I still would have been with his father. You know, I think things would have been way different. There wouldn't be no other abortions.
So, what would you say to maybe younger women around the same age that you were? How important, I guess, relationships are. I'm starting to notice that, you know, sometimes when you're not in that stable relationship, and you know, either you're not married or you're just, you know, just hooking up, and then you end up getting pregnant. I mean, that has a lot of influence, right,
Yes.
on your decision,
Yes.
right? But I like how you said before. You said, you know, you never really saw it as a choice.
Right.
You want to
No.
elaborate just a little bit more on?
I mean, I honestly think abortion isn't a choice. It's definitely a selfish act that we don't want to come to terms with. I mean, an abortion should never be a choice. It's something that we just say, hey, I want to get rid of this baby just for because I don't want to deal with it. And, you know, we are the ones that are actually the cruel ones. You know, I wouldn't ever call it a choice, you know? I'm choosing to brush my teeth, maybe, you know? That's a choice. But I never would call it a choice because to me, I was just so cruel and I was just really being evil and not even thinking about it. And when I realized after everything that I've been through that I was so selfish and I was more angry at myself for doing this to them more than anything. So definitely not a choice, a selfish act, I would say.
I think sometimes, when people do look at it as a choice, sometimes they don't think of the impact of their choice. I think another thing that sometimes get missed in the argument is we say it's a choice, but sometimes people feel they have no choice. Like, even though you have a choice to go there, you may feel like you're in a place to where you really don't have a choice because you don't have the support or you don't have the resources or, like you said, you want to make a quick decision. And but let's talk a little bit about the impact that it had on you, like after. I mean, you can go either from the first one or just having multiple ones. Has it had any impact on you that you would like to
Well,
discuss?
on the first impact, the first abortion I had, I just, like, I tried to put it behind me and I couldn't because so many things came out of that, you know, more drugs and more drinking and more partying, try to fill that void with alcohol and I wasn't promiscuous or sleeping around with just anyone. I had a boyfriend at the time and he was really great supporter and I just didn't want to really think about it at all. I just like buried it deep down inside. But another monster developed and grew. The pain grew, and I just didn't know where or why because I buried it. So it was just another problem that came to the surface. And it was just getting high on drugs and drinking. So that's what made it worse.
Now, and you said you had 4 abortions.
Yes.
After the first one, and this is just out of curiosity, do they ever ask you when you go for your second or third, have you had an abortion before or anything like
Well,
that?
honestly, I can't remember.
Okay.
I just couldn't remember. And if they did ask me, I wasn't really trying to answer the question. I was just thinking about how to get it over with. That was
Yeah.
the only thing that was on my mind, how to get it over with.
Did they ever provide you with like any information about, you know, the after effects or anything like
No,
that?
not at all.
Wow. Is that
No.
something that you would probably tell somebody?
Well, my friends that had abortions told me they were the ones that told me what's going to happen afterwards. And they told me that, you're going to bleed a lot, like after your baby. Um, your insides are going to be looking for the baby and you're going to be feeling it. So they were the ones that knew because they had been there. So they were the ones that were counseling me to tell me, and it was after the fact and after my first abortion. Because, you know, um, my second abortion, a lot of people knew, but not my third abortion or my fourth abortion. No one really knew about them. But the first one, the whole town knew about my first abortion. So, yes. It was heart wrenching.
Well, I really do admire your courage to be able to sit there and on live TV and just tell your story. And I'm sure that's the hardest part. But let's talk a little bit now about how did you seek out healing? Did you even feel the need to? How did that come about?
Well, 32 years later, I'm going to church, Spring Valley Church, and I'm in the bathroom and I see a pamphlet. And Sunday after Sunday, it was calling my name, Evelyn, Evelyn. So I grabbed the pamphlet, which is right here in my hand, and it said Deepest Still Retreat. So I look at it and I open it and I read it, and I left it on my desk for 3 weeks. And the Lord is like, aren't you going to call them already? Like, give them a call. So I called Deeper Still, and it really changed my life 100%. I mean, I have so much healing going on, and there's more going on that I just can't believe it. The Deeper Still Retreat, I have the pamphlet right here. It was wonderful.
You
I
could probably
met,
lift it up a little bit. Maybe they could see it.
yes.
So
I met Trish Scafani at the Deeper Still Retreat. She's the director from the Eastern Deeper Still. And when I went there, I gotta tell you that the enemy was all over me. That same day, he was trying to stop me from going. He didn't want me to be healed, or he didn't want anyone to be healed. I mean, he was just on me like white on rice. And it was just so weird what was going on. No one couldn't understand. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. And he was getting me nervous, and he was trying to scare me into not going to the retreat.
And what were you most scared about? Just real quick.
I honestly wasn't scared. I was just nervous.
Nervous.
I
Okay.
needed to go and do something for myself to get some healing. And, I was not, not ignoring him, but I was trying my best to not get into a war with him, because if I would have, it would have stopped me from going. So as he would tell me, don't go, they're going to kill you, and all of this crazy stuff, I was just like, okay, I'm still going, So at that moment, I had my bags packed. I was just doing a few minor details. And once I went out that door, everything got quiet. The enemy got quiet. There was nothing he could do until I got to the retreat, you know?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I got to the retreat on Friday night. We told our stories on how we had our abortions. And like I said, the enemy was all over me for almost the whole weekend up until the very end. Uh, and it was really hard for me to try to get my story out, because I couldn't verbally explain myself because of Satan. He tried to stop me. But the retreat did help me. It went in deep. There was nothing on the surface. Everything was just deep, deep, deep healing. My favorite part was when they were praying over me, because that released a lot of hate and anger and a lot of depression that I carried throughout the years.
From the abortions?
Yes, from the abortions, because I would always say, why am I depressed? Why am I depressed? Like, it wasn't a normal depressed that, oh, I broke up with my boyfriend, or I got into an argument with my sister. It was just not normal at all and stuff. We did a lot of praying. We did some reading, but the third night of the retreat, they did a ceremony for the babies, and it was just so wonderful. I mean, I just can't stop thinking about it. I mean, I took every bit of it with me, even though I had the enemy and he was trying to block me from anything that was going to heal me. He tried to block it, even at the retreat. So it was kind of hard, but I just kept on, like blocking it, whatever, okay, because Satan doesn't want no one to be free. And especially me, like, I just couldn't understand, why are you writing me? Why? Just leave me alone and let me do what I have to do, because I'm going to still do it. And he tried every tactic in my mind.
So, tell us a little bit about that memorial service, because I know you said that it meant a lot to you.
Yes.
And I say that because, in our society, I mean, we don't even consider a child in the womb an actual child. So when an abortion happens, there's no funeral, no death certificate, no even chance to even mourn the death of your child or to come to terms with. So could you just tell us a little bit about that memorial service and what it meant to you, and maybe somebody who's watching who may have had an abortion service and they're like, a memorial service, what?
Well, to me, I found it so soothing towards the end, because it was just like the icing on the cake. Like, we have a memorial service for your babies. Like, it was just so beautiful. You get some time to yourself at the end of the retreat after the memorial, and you just have like a peace come over you, a peace knowing that they are in heaven watching over you too with the Lord. And it's so wonderful, the peace that I experienced that day. It was just so peaceful, refreshing. Like, I didn't expect that throughout the whole thing. It was just like, I'm still in awe with it, because it was just so beautiful. It was definitely beautiful.
That's good. That's good. So let's we have a home viewer actually. So let's let the home viewer see if we have a question or.
Yes, I do, Evelyn. I do have a question about your healing. I was wondering, when you went in, you talk a lot about healing, but what healing from what? What were some of the things that you experienced before you went in? Emotionally, I guess I'm looking for a greater understanding of the healing that you're speaking about after the retreat.
She had mentioned she wants you to go more into the feelings that you felt after the retreat. If you can maybe elaborate a little bit more on that.
After the retreat,
Like relief or I believe that's what the caller was saying.
yes.
If you can.
Well, for me, after the retreat,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like a relief because obviously I had did it, but I felt free from the pain. I was just in so much pain and I just couldn't believe how free I was. I mean, I cried afterwards and the Lord was saying, "You're free. You don't need to cry anymore. You don't need to be hurt." And I just started to go back from the beginning of the retreat and I just started analyzing how free I started to be when the Lord said, "You're free." So I was like not carrying that burden on me, like, oh, I had an abortion. And, it was just like, you had an abortion, now you're free from it. You don't got to be sad anymore. You can be happy. And it's just so much more that you gain from it. You gain a perspective that your kids love you no matter what. It was just freeing and soothing.
Mm.
I just can't explain it. You have to have that feeling to experience it yourself.
Um. So after the retreat, in your feelings, you talked about depression.
Yes.
Do you still struggle with that, or did that help you in your depression aspect? Because I know
Oh,
before you talked about how you were very depressed and very angry. So after, could you talk a little bit about that? And then we have a home viewer actually, if you want to see their question first.
yes.
So. Yes, we can't hear the home viewer's question. Can you just repeat that?
Is this Scott? Is this should I talk now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
I just wanted to ask. Um, she said that now she has freedom. So I was wondering what freedom looked like to her today. Like, in what way has her life changed since the retreat for the better?
Okay, so the home viewer is asking about what does freedom look like to you now?
Well, freedom looks like not being depressed, because after that, that was what I was going to answer. That I, like, after the retreat, like a week later, after I cried and the Lord said, "Don't worry," I began to feel free from the depression. Like there was no more moping or sadness for something that I didn't even realize that I had done. The depression was just there, and that's part of the enemy's plan to keep you down in depression. And it was just like one day I woke up and I just was free. Like it was just, you know, I was just happy, the happy Evelyn that was, like when I was 13, before I did any of this stuff, it just like rolled off of me. Like instantly, I just woke up and I just didn't feel sad about it anymore. And it had to do with the retreat freeing me. Like you have to apply yourself. If you don't apply yourself and put your heart and soul into what they're giving you, and they're giving you your freedom, and it's your freedom from the pain from the abortions and the depressions. Like if you don't take it in and absorb it and write
Mm-hmm.
down all the pain and let it go, because if you don't let it go, then it's gonna carry with you for the rest of your life. And I I'm free from that pain right now.
Okay. And I would just like to say to the home viewers that the retreat that Evelyn is talking about, you can find information on that at www.godeeperstill.org. And Tris' phone number is 610-763-8535. That's a great resource. And they also have Ray Church Vineyard, which can also be found at www.rachelsvineyard.org. We do have another home viewer, so let's go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
I'd like to commend Miss Lopez on her courage to come and tell her story. And I was just wondering, she looks like she might be a little over 39. Some years have passed for her since she had abortions. And many would say that you just get over it. And that certainly isn't your case. What can you say to that? You just don't get over it, do you?
Well, thank you for that question. The caller was saying that you look well. It's been a while since you've had your abortions, and a lot of people often say, "Oh, you just get over it." And he was basically asking, is that something that you can get over? Or, even, 10, 20 years pass. Is it still something that people would struggle with? Do they still need to, reach out?
Well, even though I said I hit them deep down inside, every now and then I would say, "Oh, I had an abortion." So,
like from your fourth abortion
to now, yes,
how much time is that? Just roughly, it doesn't have to be exact.
Maybe almost 29 years or something like that.
So, because I think what the caller was trying to say is even after 29 years, you're still being affected.
Yes, definitely. I mean, you could be free from the pain, but it's something, like I said, we had done. So it's going to go with us for the rest of our life. You just can't put it under the rug and say, "Oh, I had an abortion," and I forget about it and put it behind me. No. Well, for me, I couldn't ever forget about what I had done.
So it's like 29 years of being in bondage, before you found, like we were talking about before this, freedom.
Yes, there is freedom in abortion.
Yeah.
There's freedom for everyone. And if you're willing to, go secretly to someone, if you don't want everyone to know, there's freedom for your pain in abortion. Yes, because I feel free a lot from it. I'm not happy that I had these abortions, but I'm happy that I can actually come here and talk about it and be free from the pain, and maybe help another young lady.
And so now I think we'll transition to, just like you said, you've come here and you've let your story out, which takes a lot of courage. But you've been involved a lot in the pro-life movement. It's like you got your voice back. And let's discuss some of those things in the pro-life movement that you've been doing.
Okay, well, I'm downtown in front of the abortion clinic protesting. A lot of people don't understand what I'm doing there. They don't want to hear it. They haven't threw me paint yet, but I'm doing it because this is part of God's plan and it's His will for not only my life, but for almost every woman that has had abortion. And I just want to address that young women that are being brainwashed, they need to know that abortion is killing a baby. And it's not fair to these young women that are being brainwashed, or these young women that look up to their parents and they don't know. I just say that to the young girls that are being promiscuous, to try to have a special relationship with your parent, because if you don't have a door to communication, that's where they hide stuff and they make the choice about having the abortion. Because for me, I couldn't communicate with my mother. So I communicated with my friends, and they showed me that way out, So I just would like for these young girls to know that God loves them first and foremost, and He is willing to help them. And there are a lot of parents out there that are willing to help their children raise these babies or help them give them up for adoption instead of saying go to the abortion clinic, because we have these generational curses that's the first thing that a parent would say, oh, let's just go and get rid of it. And no, because there's other ways of saving these babies.
And, I like how you started it off when you said, when you're down there in front of Planned Parenthood, a lot of people don't understand why you're there.
Right.
And, and hearing your story, you're not just there because it's political football or because, you like holding up signs, but you have a story that, started way back then, if you will,
32 years ago when
32
I had my
years
first
ago.
abortion.
And, when you're standing out there and you're trying to, anyone who will listen, like you said, young women who walk in there, and, if they gave you 1 minute and they said, hey, I'm in a desperate situation, I may not want to, but look, I don't have choices. What would you say to that girl?
I would tell her that this isn't a choice. You're being selfish because you want to get rid of this baby because of the choice you made by having sex. Now, I would suggest that you practice abstinence, and you won't be in that position. I wouldn't even recommend a birth control or a condom. And it's really hard because it starts with these young women dating these young guys that only want one thing. Now, if they would know what the guy only wanted, they wouldn't be in that predicament, because not only that they're going to choose getting hurt by the guy, they going to want to get rid of the baby because of the guy. So I would suggest that they would value themselves.
And what would you say, because, another thing about, standing out and praying in front of Planned Parenthood and, trying to warn people going in, what would you say to people who are just driving by, or it doesn't seem like an issue for them, or that's not something that they're interested in? What would you say to them about abortion? Why should they be concerned about it? Just as a person who went through it, what would you say to them? Like, this is why you should pay attention to what goes on here. This is why you should pay attention.
Well, first and foremost, I would say it's a human life. Like, you yourself are flesh and bone, and we all bleed the same. Now, think about it. Now, go back to the beginning when you were a child. Think about it. If your mother would have had aborted you, you wouldn't be here to receive this message. It wouldn't be fair, to your grandchildren. Maybe they would have another, sibling or something, another child. I mean, it wouldn't be fair to take a child and abort it. Like, we are robbing ourselves from the greatest joy that God has given us. And that is heart-wrenching. And people that don't understand it, because they hear it and then they cut you off. And it's because a lot of people have a lot of secrets and they don't want no one to know that they had the abortion. And they would say, oh, you a liar, and, so on and so on, to just try to get out of it and stuff.
Yeah. It just reminds me of a quote. I hope I don't butcher this quote, but it was Ronald Reagan who said, I've always noticed that the people who are pro-choice have already been born.
Wow.
And, as you were talking, it just kind of reminded me, of that quote. So, let's, and you kind of alluded to this already about, what we can do to, reach out, to girls and to young men, the youth, really about, the dangers of, being, sexually active and, not being in good relationships, particularly at, young ages. What advice would you have for them?
Like I said, abstinence. Don't have sex until marriage. because, like I said, the young men only just want one thing. And after they get it, they're going to act like they didn't know you. And if you were pregnant, they're going to say, oh, you were promiscuous, you slept around. And it's not a fun having an abortion, because for me, my abortions damaged my insides. Like my uterus, I don't have it anymore because I had a tilted uterus, and it was due to these abortions. And you have more issues after having an abortion than not having none at all. So being on birth control, 6 months on and 6 months off, it kind of messes with you. So like a few years ago, I had to get my uterus removed. And they were like, I don't understand, but your uterus is tilted. And once they told me that, immediately I thought of the abortions. I mean, I'm not a doctor at all, but I know that it was from these abortions that I had. I was having a lot of problems with a lot of pain and bleeding, and they tried to do everything, and they couldn't do anything because the uterus was so tilted that I had to just get it removed due to these abortions.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. I also know that you're a poet. I mean, I've been lucky enough to hear your poems.
Well, before you go on, it's funny because my grandmother's name is Justina, and my other grandmother's name is Sabina. So my baby's names all rhyme except for my firstborn and my two sons. So my aborted baby was Samantha. That was the first one. And then my second one was Ramina, which is my father and mother's name. No, sorry, that was little Louie. Then the third one was Ramina, and my fourth one was Sabina. So
I have a question about that, just real quick, about the names of your aborted children.
Yeah.
Is this new, or did you always have that?
no. Well, when I was in my retreat, you have some bears, and I didn't even look. I just grabbed 3 girls and 1 boy, and that's what the Lord said. We have a lot of females in our family. So I was like, okay, this makes sense to me because we have a lot of girls, and there was the 3 girls and 1 boy. So he gave me the names, and it was Samantha, little Louie, Romina, and Sabina. And my daughter's name is Justina, the one that's here. So I was just like, yeah, because God knows that I love poetry so much since I was very young. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. I wouldn't even believe it.
And how much did that mean to you about, giving your children names?
I was just like, am I making this up in my mind? And I'm like, no. The Lord's like, no, these are their names. And I was like, but they rhyme. He said, yes, because you like to rhyme. And, your grandmother's name is Justina and the other one is Sabina. And I was just like, it all makes sense, Lord. And he was the one that put it all together for me.
And that was a lot part of your healing too, I'm sure,
Yes,
right?
it is. I have my bears. I look at them. I talk to them. I call them my Hebrew babies.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
Yep, your Hebrew babies.
Yeah.
So about this poem here, you wanna read us
Sure.
a poem here, and make sure you give us the title there. And...
Okay, I'm going to start off with Psalms 32:5 from the King James Version, the New King James Version. I acknowledge my sin to you, and my iniquity I have not hidden. I said I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave me of the iniquity of my sins. Now this poem is called Heavenly Baby in the Sky. Heavenly baby in the sky, I see you eye to eye, looking down from the heavenly sky. I look up knowing God has you in his hands. That's no surprise. You made it to heaven too soon because we were cruel. We will meet again real soon. Heavenly baby in the sky, there's so many of you crying in God's ear for us to hear. The pain in the rain, the screaming in the sky. Heavenly baby, God loves you. You're basking in his glory. He's carrying you in his arms. You're the joy of the Lord, his peace and soul. Heavenly baby, you're so sweet. When can we meet so I can hug you and cry at your feet? The beauty in your eyes shine like the sun, the one and only Lamb of God, baby in heaven. Heavenly baby, you so blessed. Heavenly baby in the sky, I see you tenderly looking at me, telling me I'm free. I will always be your baby by the love we share in heaven. We're bound together. I'm on a heavenly cloud. You hear my sorries really loud. You see my tears and I feel yours. They form a lake. Your heavenly rays that shine through my window remind me that my heavenly babies are tenderly watching me with a soft light, yes, so bright, saying, Mommy, we all right. We're safe in his fortress. We're in his hiding place. In heaven, we're never alone. Marvelously, we are the heart of heaven. We belong to the kingdom of the sky. We're the heavenly babies in the sky. New Living Translation, Deuteronomy 139. I will give the land to your little ones, your innocent children. You are afraid they will be captured, but they will be the ones who occupy. Jesus'
Wow.
name, amen. Thank you, Lord Father.
That is beautiful.
Thank you.
That is beautiful.
Thank you.
You want to explain that a little bit? I mean, it's,
Well,
I kind of know what inspired it, but, you want to
I wrote
kind of
this
dig
poem about maybe 2 months ago when I wrote Baby in the Womb. That one came out in the newsletter. It inspired me because I already had wrote 3 abortions, 3 poems on the abortions, and I wanted to write something about the babies that were aborted. So basically, thousands of babies was screaming in my ear, telling me to, write something for them to redeem them, and pen and paper the way I know how and stuff. And the more I write about them, the more freer I become, and the more easier it is for me to talk about it and stuff. So that's what really inspired me the
Wow.
most.
And that scripture at the end, what was that? Deuteronomy?
Deuteronomy 139.
Can you read that again?
I will give you the land to your little ones, your innocent children. You are afraid that they will be captured, but they will be the ones who occupy the land. And it was so weird because I just got this Bible verse yesterday,
Wow.
but the poem I already had written it and stuff. And when he gave me that, I said, "Are you sure?" He was like, "Yeah, just read the ending of your poem again." So I did read it, and it says, "We belong to the kingdom in the sky."
Okay. Well, we
Yeah.
actually have another home viewer. I want to make sure they get in here. You go ahead, home viewer.
Hi, Evelyn. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I actually have 2 questions, if you're able to answer them. The first is, what do you have to say to people who are maybe attracted to the healing that you have had in your life, but they feel that God wants them to suffer for what they've done and that maybe they shouldn't get healing? And my second question is, if you could have lunch with an employee or a doctor of Planned Parenthood, what would you like people working at Planned Parenthood to know about your experience and about what abortion really did to you? Thank you so much.
Okay. Were you able to hear that, or would you like me to repeat
I
it?
heard some of it in and
Okay.
out.
So it was a two-part question.
Yes.
The first one had to do with if there's anybody out there who's attracted to the healing that that I heard you talk about, and they're like, "Yeah, I really want that," but they have they have this notion that God wants them to suffer for what they did. So, what would you say to a person like that? That's the first part of the question.
Well, that's definitely a good question because I know a lot of my friends that had abortions. They look at me like if they angry with me, and they don't know that they can be free too, and it's not something I will throw in anyone's face because I know that they're hurting, and God doesn't want anyone to hurt. In fact, He wants to free them. And my journey being free from this, it was the best experience that I've experienced in my whole life. Definitely.
And the second part of that question has to do with if you had an opportunity to go to lunch with someone who worked there at the Planned Parenthood, what would you want them to know about your experience when, through the abortions that you went through?
That's another good question. I would want them to know. I wouldn't want them to go through the pain and suffering, but I would want them to know if they were to put themselves in my shoes or in anyone's shoes that had an abortion, to know how they felt. I mean, if they would know how a person would feel after the abortion, a lot of women cry and they are hurt. Maybe if the shoe was on the other foot, they would understand a lot more. If they would go through what we went through, then they would know exactly and not just act like, oh, I'm a doctor, this is my job. Like if you would go through it physically for years of pain and anguish, then they would understand the hurt and the suffering that we did and what we're going through still, because it's not something that's ever going to go away, ever.
Yeah, but I think, sometimes someone thinks that, by suffering or by punishing themselves, that somehow that's going to change something. I mean, you were there for what, 29 years? Did it change anything?
32 years.
32 years.
It didn't. The retreat healed me, but there's pain there still, and there's gonna always be pain. And it's not easy. And like I said, if you could just open your mind for a little bit and see just what the person goes through, because I'm pretty sure these doctors are in there and they doing their job, and they go home to put it behind them, and unless, their wives or daughters had an abortion, they would know exactly what we're going through. I mean, there's no other way for me to put it. Like, if you are doing this and you already know because you're killing souls, and for every soul I'm pretty sure that they kill, he's taking a piece of his heart with them, and he may not even know it. He may not even know how much it's hurting him. Some people put it deep down inside. They only, think of other things.
And, I like how you kind of already put in there, but, just like after you found freedom, it's always kind of hard to go back to someone who's, kind of have that depression and that bondage, because maybe they get so used to it that they don't know what freedom looks like, and it's not always easy to express it. I think that poem, though, were you always a poet?
Well, since I was young, I would always make up rhymes in my mind. I never wrote them down. So, kind of.
But,
Yes.
that really does, to me, that kind of shows like a freedom to it.
It is a freedom,
You know?
because God doesn't want us to be sad. He says, we are forgiven and sin no more. Don't do it again. And unfortunately, I did it 4 times,
And he still gave you freedom
he still gave me freedom because
and forgiveness. And
he has a plan for your forgiveness. There's healing. What the enemy did or wants to do, he'll use everything that the enemy does, and he'll use it for his good.
And I know we talked about Deuteronomy, but you started off with a psalm.
Yes.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, this psalm just came to me today because I read this psalm almost every day, because the Lord is telling me you're free, and he told me to read the psalm, but stop right there at number 5. And basically, I am telling him what I done. And he sent his only son to heal us. So, for me, that was great that I could confess my sin and he's forgiving me. And he's like, don't hold on to it no more. Don't carry it with you. It's over. Put it behind you. Now you can tell your story and you can help someone that doesn't want to come out or that's embarrassed, or, there is no guilt with the Lord. There's freedom in abortion, sin.
And how important is that for you to help somebody else? Because I mean, when I see you, I see that passion, and it's like, that desire to help somebody else is not just to help, but there's something deep there that I see.
Yes.
How
I wouldn't
important?
want anyone to go through this at all.
Yeah.
Like when I had my first abortion, I didn't have no money or no medical. I was like, hey, sis, I'm going to use your card. So my first abortion is not under my name, So,
Pretty weird for a healthcare facility,
oh,
right?
yeah. Like, and I was only 18. I just had only
Yeah.
turned 18. So, um, yeah, I would let them know that God has a plan to heal you. And like I said, anything that the enemy meant for evil, like the song says, he uses it for his good. And, all the glory goes to him. And if it wasn't for him, I would not have been not even here or writing poems. If I would not choose to go to this retreat, I still would have been angry, depressed, having drinks by myself, not hanging out with anyone. I just would have been just making my pain worse. But this retreat really set me free, and there is healing in abortion of sin. Yes, there is.
Wow. And I mean, I just really like that poem, and I don't know if you would mind it or not, but we only have 7 minutes left, and you want to read that poem again?
Sure.
Because it was just so touching that I just kind of felt like nobody can get it in that first reading. So can you just read it one more time for our viewers?
Heavenly baby in the sky, I see you eye to eye, looking down from the heavenly sky. I look up to the sky, knowing God has you in his hands. That's no surprise. You made it to heaven too soon because we were cruel. We will meet again real soon. Heavenly baby in the sky, there are so many of you crying in God's ear for us to hear. The pain in the rain, the screaming in the sky. Baby in heaven, God loves you. You're basking in his glory. He's carrying you in his arms. You're the joy of the Lord, his peace and his soul. Heavenly baby, you're so sweet. When can we meet so I can hug you and cry at your feet? Heavenly baby, in your eyes, shine like the sun, the one and only Lamb of God. Baby in heaven, baby in the heavenly sky, you are so blessed. Heavenly baby in the sky, I see your eyes tenderly looking at me, telling me I'm free. I will always be your baby. By the love in heaven, we're bound together. I'm on a heavenly cloud. You hear my sorries really loud. You see my tears and I feel yours. They form a lake. Your heavenly rays that shine through my window remind me that my heavenly babies are tenderly watching me. With a soft light yet so bright, saying, Mommy, Mommy, we are right. We're safe in his fortress. We're in his hiding place. In heaven, we're never alone. Marvelously, we're the heart of heaven. We belong to the kingdom in the sky. We are the heavenly babies in the sky.
We got to get you to publish because that is a beautiful poem.
Thank you.
And I wanted you to read it again and I hope the viewers can see this too, is like it comes from your soul.
Yes.
And, we had that question about, what does freedom look like? What does healing look like? And, poetry affects us in different ways.
Yes.
And just to be able to hear that from you after hearing your story is, that's more than just intellectually showing somebody what it can do. It's like it's showing them what they can do to their spirit, to their mind, And there's always room for more healing.
Exactly.
But to hear you read that is just, I mean, it's beautiful, it's instructive, and you know, we're coming to the end. I'm sure this ain't the last we're gonna see or hear from you. And the more poems you get, I mean, look in our newsletter because I know that you do publish poems in there. But before we go, I'm gonna leave the floor to you. Is there anything in the last 2 minutes that you would like to tell, whether it's just the viewers in general, or maybe to just someone who's out there who's just wondering, you know, where can I get the healing? And again, I'll just remind the home viewers that Deeper Still, you can Google it or you can look it up at www.godeeperstill.org. And there's also a Rachel's Vineyard at www.rachelsvineyard.org. And you can look, you know, for those retreats. But
I just really want to say to the parents of these young girls out here to leave a door open for communication. Give them a space in their heart where they know they could be free to speak to their parents about anything, because that's where it all starts at, in the home. These kids and young men should be able to speak to their parents about anything, you know? So to me, that's the main important thing, that they could practice abstinence and try to wait their best until marriage, and for their parents to keep the door open to communication and not to yell at them, because that just closes the door to them and they look elsewhere. And these young girls out here, even young men, they need their parents to fully communicate with them and understand that this is a serious business right here, that aborting babies is not the way to go, you know, and may they understand that, because I didn't have my mother. I had my friends and my sisters, and they just gave me abortion numbers, and they did what I decided that I was going to do. And if I had the door of communication open with my mother, I probably would have had all my babies.
well, I think that's a very powerful message.
Yes.
And again, I thank you for the courage it takes to sit here on live television and tell your story and care enough about people to you know, to step out like this.
Yes.
So, I mean, I definitely appreciate you coming on the show,
Thank you for having me.
and I definitely appreciate all the home viewers. And next month, we'll be back, and Kathy will be back, and we're gonna have a good show. I won't tell you exactly what it is now, but we look forward to seeing you then. Would you like to say goodbye to the audience?
Goodbye, and thank you for watching so much. Be free from abortion.
Again, thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Pro-Life Berks on BCTV is underwritten by Tom Schaefer RV Superstore.